All, this is Dr. Mubin Sayed from drbean.com. Welcome to another talk. We will continue our discussions about COVID-19 topics. Today, there is a very important discussion. I feel that we have had this discussion many times, but it is still very important. And that is, we have the results for recovery trial, especially the hydroxychloroquine arm. So I wanted to make sure that we look at it and we understand what they are doing over there. Many of you have actually already seen the trial. You've seen the doses, you've seen the missing zinc or the azithromycin, but I wanted to go over some of this data and kind of start preparing us for a little bit more technical discussions that would happen. I don't want us to be left out because we did not understand some of the technical sleight of hands that you would see in the coming days. So let's start our discussion. So first of all, here is a disclaimer. So Luffy is here. So of course, please realize that the discussions that we are doing here, these discussions are not a prescription for any one specific person. These are educational discussions, and we are just preparing ourselves. We are educating ourselves. The prescriptions are up to you and your patient. So with this, couple of more announcements as well. We will have Dr. Nader Porasan, the CEO of Cytodine, once again tomorrow with us, Cytodine's CEO. And then on Monday, we'll have Dr. Bruce Patterson with us. And then hopefully we'll have some more guests in the coming days. So with this announcement, I'm pretty excited about it. Let's start our discussion. One thing that you would observe a lot nowadays is going to be the discussions around the Tmax and the Cmax and the half-life and the elimination half-life and the terminal half-life of a drug, the dosage concentrations of the drug and stuff like that. That would be very interesting. And you would see similar things in the recovery trial as well. So I wanted to make sure that we can, at least from a high level, look at these concepts so we are not totally left out when these discussions would happen. So I'm going to start this discussion. So the very first discussion over here, the topic over here, is the drug pharmacokinetics. What that means is that when a drug is administered to us, whichever route it is the oral route or the IV route or intramuscular route or rectal route or parenteral route, whatever it is, once the drug is administered, the drug starts getting absorbed in our body. When it is absorbed, a time comes when the maximum concentration of the drug becomes available. After that, the drug starts becoming eliminated. And this is the primary concept around which these various terms are available or are there. So let's look at it. Look at this graph here. And let's say this line is the plasma concentration of the drug. So when we have administered the drug would start becoming available in the plasma. So this line, the vertical axis, is showing the plasma concentration of the drug. The horizontal axis is showing the time. So you can say that this is the variation in plasma concentration of a drug over time. Now let's say over here, in this area is when the drug was ingested. Let's say this is hydroxychloroquine, and the drug was taken by a person by mouth. So this is an oral ingestion that is here. That is the time 0. The drug takes some time. So the drug is taken up. It goes into our stomach. Then it goes into our intestine. Over there, it gets absorbed. It goes to liver. It may get some modifications. Then it would start becoming available in the blood and plasma. So this time when the drug is taken to the time when it starts appearing in the plasma or in the blood is called the absorption lag time. So that is the time that is needed for the drug to become absorbed and available. And I'm kind of chuckling as well as I'm doing this discussion. We are going to become doctors together. And please remember, none of this is a prescription for any specific person. These are just educational videos for us to be ready and prepared. Most of these videos are directed at medical students, doctors, nurses, students, NPs, PAs, and so on. The other folks who are with us, this is a great thing to be ready as well to understand the concepts, but these are not prescriptions. Back here, so once the drug has started becoming available, the drug concentration over time would start becoming increased. So this is that part. And this is why this part of this chart here, or this thing, is the absorption phase. As long as the concentration continues to increase, we are in the absorption phase. Imagine in a simplistic way that the drug is sitting in the intestine and is slowly getting absorbed and entering the blood. So as long as the drug is available in the intestine, and as long as it is becoming absorbed and going into the blood, the concentration in the blood would continue to rise. Then at some point inside the intestine, the drug would finish. It would have either moved on towards a fecal route, or it would have all been absorbed. Whatever is the fate of the drug, there is no more drug in the intestine for us to absorb further, and we would have reached a peak beyond which the drug concentration is not going to go. So this phase, where the drug continues to become available and keeps increasing, is the absorption phase. Once the drug has been absorbed, then what happens is the drug starts getting eliminated. And the elimination of drug, there are many, many ways that the drug is eliminated. It can be modified in our liver. It can go and become stored in our tissues and then slowly be removed from there. It can be removed by our renal route or in the urine. It can be eliminated through the fecal route. So there are many ways that the drug will be eliminated. So once the drug starts being eliminated or removed from the body, the concentration in the blood or plasma would start reducing, eventually to a point where it would reach zero. Correct? It would finish from our body. So that whole time, when after the maximum concentration, the concentration of the blood, the drug continues to fall, this whole time is called elimination phase. This whole time is called elimination phase. So we have now two phases of the drug. We have absorption phase and we have elimination phase. Now, some terms that are important for us to know, because you would see them in various trials and studies now. One is concentration max, or the maximum concentration. Of course, that is what it says here. This is the peak amount of the drug that has become available in our blood after a specific dose has been administered. So that is the maximum concentration, or Cmax. In case of hydroxychloroquine, and I'm taking this data from our Dr. Paul Merrick. It is funny today. I was talking with him via email, and I said that your interview has lots of views, and people are really happy, and they are liking what you are doing. And he said, "I'm feeling like a soybean soup." So he was pretty funny. So here, this is a presentation by Dr. Paul Merrick. He was kind enough to send it to me. In here, this is hydroxychloroquine. And he's talking about the bioavailability of the hydroxychloroquine, that is the hydroxychloroquine coming into our body. And I hope he's okay me sharing it. I didn't get a previous permission from him. I'll actually ask him for forgiveness later on. So this is what he had done, but I want to make sure that we look at this part. Mean lag time before absorption after oral dose equal 0.43 hours. What does that mean in this graph over here? This is this time that when the drug was given by mouth, and then when it started appearing in the blood. So that is the mean lag time, or absorption lag time. And mean simply means average. In the average number of people, it was 0.43 hours, or about 45 minutes. No, not 45 minutes, about lesser than half an hour. Then over here, once the drug has reached its maximum, then what happens is, as it is becoming eliminated, then there comes a time. So I have put the marker here. The marker should have been somewhere over here, where it is the maximum peak achieved. From that time, when it becomes half in the blood concentration, or when the concentration becomes half in the blood, that is called half-life of the drug. So for example, in this chart here, let's say we take a point here, and then this point becomes, the drug quantity here becomes half by this time. So from here to here, or from here to here, is the half concentration. And the time that is spent between the concentration number 1 and the concentration number 2, which is half, that time is the elimination half-life or terminal half-life. In this time, whatever this is, for example, for hydroxychloroquine, it is 50 days. What that means is that whatever, if the concentration of the drug is X today in my blood, then in 50 days, it will become half of that. And there are many reasons for that. Drugs can have a wide distribution in our body. That means they can go to various tissues, get stored over there, and then slowly become available from there back to the plasma and the blood. Then there can be a delay in the modification of the drug to excrete. So there can be many reasons why some drugs have longer half-lives and others have shorter half-lives. The hydroxychloroquine has a very long half-life. So 50 plus minus 16 days. This is the time in which the drug becomes half. And again, this chart is not for scale, because if you see over here, for me, this is lesser than half an hour, and then this is 50 days. So of course, the chart is not to scale. It is just an illustration for the discussion. The concentration maximum of the drug is usually 46 nanogram per milliliter plasma, and we'll talk about the dosage in a second, or 244 nanogram per milliliter of blood. So there is a comment on YouTube, on Facebook, that I heard that the half-life is 22. So yes, in textbooks, the half-life is said to be 22. I am using Dr. Paul Merrick's numbers, so I'm just putting his numbers out there, and these are the numbers here. So if you see here, mean terminal half-life, 50 plus minus 16 days oral, and 44 plus minus 12 days IV. So which means that it takes 6 months to acquire or achieve 96% of the steady state level with the usual once daily oral dose regime. So I hope that this is clear, that what is Cmax. We should also see what is Tmax. The Tmax is the time that is taken for the drug to reach its maximum concentration. So for the drug to reach Cmax, the time that was taken is called Tmax, so the maximum time. So I hope that this is clear. Now let's look at some of the pharmacokinetics over here. Mean lag time for this drug, that is the time to start becoming absorbed, 0.43 hours. Mean Tmax, the time when the concentration becomes maximum after you have given it orally, 3.2 hours. Mean Cmax, it is the maximum concentration that becomes available in blood or in plasma. So that is over here. Mean terminal half-life, we talked about it. Now I want to show you one more thing, and this is interesting. Again, this is data coming from Dr. Paul Merrick. In vitro antiviral activity and projection of optimized dosing design of hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of severe acute respiratory syndrome. Again, this does not mean what I'm showing you here. It doesn't mean that Dr. Paul believes that we should use hydroxy or we should not use hydroxy. I am just looking at his data and sharing it with us as an example, because you're going to start seeing those things in various trials, and you're going to see them for sure in the Twitter feeds, and we should be able to understand what this means. So here, if you see, I'm going to look at hydroxychloroquine and not chloroquine phosphate. We remember Brazil had done a chloroquine phosphate study, and that was a disaster. Chloroquine phosphate is not the thing to use with light approach. Hydroxychloroquine sulfate here are various dosages that he has carved out. Day 1, 800 milligram plus 400 milligram. So total 1200 milligram. Day 2 to day 10, 400 milligram QD. QD simply means once daily. Then there is another possibility. Day 1, 600 milligram BID, that is twice, and that becomes 1200 milligram too. Then day 2, 400 milligram QD once a day. Another possibility is day 1, 600 milligram BID, that is twice, that makes it 1200 milligram. Then day 2 to 10, 200 milligram by BID, divided doses of 400 milligram. Another possibility is day 1, 400 milligram twice, and then day 2 to 10, 200 milligram twice. This is the kind of regime that India has been using for prophylaxis for their essential workers, but it is not day 1, day 2, day 3. It is once a week. So the very first day of the week, 800 milligram of the hydroxychloroquine is given. Then after 7 days, after a week, 400 milligram is given. Then after another week, 400 milligram is given. So there is a gap of 7 days between doses. This one over here, we're talking about the dose given first day, then second day, and then third day, and it continues till 10 days. And what he has done is he has calculated various available concentrations that will be available in the lung tissue. So I think it's an interesting data point over here. Now with this much that we have, I would like us to, when we look at this study, the preprint is out for recovery trial. When we look at that study, please make sure that you're looking at the dose, you're looking at the presence of or absence of zinc, and you're looking at for any combinations with the Z-Pak. So let's start. Let's look at it. So this is the preprint from the recovery trial. Again, it is a preprint. I know people criticize me for bringing up preprint, but look, even recovery trial data is going through the preprint. You have to go to a preprint, then the peer reviews occur, comments come in, and then it becomes accepted as a print or not. So this is a preprint. It has been sent on July 15 or published on July 15. It may have been sent earlier. And you can see the link over here. I have downloaded the PDF and I wanted to go over the PDF for certain things here. So let's look at it. Some of the things that are interesting for me. You can go over the study itself and you can see the number of participants and everything. But what is interesting for me is this. Starting from here, they are saying among those with a completed follow-up form, 92% patients allocated to hydroxychloroquine received at least one dose, and the median numbers of days of treatment was 6 days. 0.4% of the usual care arm received hydroxychloroquine. Use of azithromycin or other macrolide drug during the follow-up period was similar in both arms. Fine. One more thing is over here is the dosage. So this is a very important thing. So I am requesting you to look at the dose, look at the presence or absence of zinc, and then the azithromax. Patients allocated to hydroxychloroquine sulfate, 200 milligram tablet containing 155 milligram base equivalent, receiving, now check this out, receiving a loading dose of 4 tablets, 800 milligram at 0 and 6 hours. So 800 plus 800 within 6 hours. 1600 milligram given. Followed by 2 tablets, 400 milligram, starting at 12 hours after the initial dose. So within the first 12 hours, 1600 milligram is given. And then at the 12th hour, another 800 milligram is given. So how much is that? 2400 milligram. Then every 12 hours for the next 9 days or until discharge, which is also 400 milligram, I believe, given 2 tablets of 800 milligram given every day till discharge. So 2400 milligram in the first day. And now looking at the recovery trial, I read through the document. So they have a reasoning, rationale for why they're giving such a high dose. And that is, they're trying to say that, hey, we gave such a high dose so that we can have a higher rapid concentration in the lungs. My simple question to them is actually that what has determined what is the right dose required in the lungs? I see a lots of general practitioners who have been using therapeutic doses of 400 milligram in 2 divided doses every day. Or if I look at India, 800 milligram the first day and then 400 milligram afterwards. What is so wrong in trying that? What is so wrong to try that with zinc? And then I understand that there is a QT interval prolongation, so arrhythmias can be possible. And so combining with azithromax can actually cause even more arrhythmias, because azithromax also causes QT interval prolongation. So that means cardiac issue risk is very high. Fine. Combine them or not combine them is a different discussion. But why such a high dose? And I remember Dr. Paul Merrick's comment when he said the dosage was such that it would kill people. So if that is the case, how can we start looking at such studies and say, yeah, this is a good study? I was looking at my Twitter feed and somebody had, I wanna make sure of one thing. I do not have a bias towards one drug versus another. You have seen that I've talked about remdesivir, I have talked about favipiravir, I've talked about hydroxychloroquine, zinc, azithromax, doxycycline, dexamethasone, nebulizers, and so on. So I don't have the basic opinion of mine are with me. I'm not trying to lean one way or the other. I am trying to put facts out for the cool beans over here so we can think for ourselves. That's all I'm doing. So I'm becoming a vehicle to bring this information to you instead of trying to taint it on the way. Now, with this disclaimer, I'm going to tell you my experience with hydroxychloroquine. It was so funny. This morning, I was talking with one of the patients who had been taking hydroxychloroquine after I had prescribed them because they were COVID-19 positive. And I had asked them to stop about 2 or 3 days ago. She called me this morning and she said, I still have the throat issue. I still have cough. Can I take another dose of this drug? And this is the second time she did. 2 days ago, she also called me and said, I had quit. So she used it for 3 days, so not for a long time. Used it for 3 days, became very, very good. Then a day later, she called me and she said, I have the cough still going on. Can I take one more dose? I said, take it for 2 more days. And she took that drug for 2 more days. Her throat stayed okay. Then I asked her to stop. And then she called again this morning saying, 1 more day. So it is the patient who is now saying that this is helping me, I need it. There is another case, I had mentioned that in the past. That case is a friend of mine, he's a doctor. He became severely ill with COVID-19 to the point that his oxygen saturation fell 93% to 93%. He was not a fan of hydroxychloroquine. He called me. I said, look, I believe that hydroxychloroquine can help. So why don't you take that? And I am very careful in giving hydroxychloroquine. I look at the patient's weight. I look at their body habitus. I look at their blood pressure. I look at their breathing rate. I look at their heart rate. I try to make sure that once the first dose is given of 200 milligram, we do a follow-up to see what is happening throughout that day in terms of blood pressures and heart rate. So any arrhythmias or any such things we can see. Then the second dose is given 12 hours later. Then once again, the follow-up on their blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate, so the oxygen saturation. So there's a lot that I become very careful with. And he recovered. 5 days later, he stopped. He had a bounce back of the virus. 2 days later, after suffering once again, He said, "Can I please continue for a few more days?" I said, "Just 2 more days." And he became okay. Now, I was looking at somebody's feed on Twitter who was saying, the studies continue to prove that these hydroxy does not work, while you guys keep bullshitting that it works. And I think the important point is to see that general physicians have learned to manage this virus in the outpatient situations without the help of these study-oriented data, because they have the patient in their hand, they have to do something. Look at Dr. Zelenko. He has learned to do it. I've seen a lot of other physicians who have learned to use steroids at various times during the disease, and very good results are out there. Look at Dr. Richard Bartlett, that he's been using nebulizer. I have one more physician here in the US. She says, I use steroids in a very, not in the asymptomatic or very early stage, but she says, as soon as I see, she has a criteria, as soon as I see the following symptoms and oxygen sat, I immediately start steroids. And she says, I have 100% turnaround. The point I'm making is, it is not necessary that every study is good. It is not necessary that the study is the only thing that can guide. There are doctors who have anecdotal data which can guide them to continue to use some drug or not. So back here, the study is really terrible. Dose is very high. Zinc is absent. They make a mention of azithromycin for the follow-up, but I didn't see that azithromycin was used during as a drug combination. So I want to continue with some more things to see here. To me, this is a bad study. Although the guy who was tweeting, he was saying that this is a nicely double-blinded whatever study. But look, you give someone poison in double-blinded, prospective, randomized study, you're still going to kill someone. So then you can't say, well, the study was beautiful. So here, so we talked about this one. Demonstration of therapeutic efficacy of hydroxychloroquine in severe COVID-19 would require rapid attainment of efficacious levels of free drug in blood and respiratory epithelium, this to provide the greatest chance of providing benefit in life-threatening COVID-19. So this is the rationale for a high dose. I have another opinion over here, which I think is very important, and that is hydroxy needs to be in prophylaxis or early outpatient situation. When doctors are looking at patients in the hospital, it is entirely possible that the patient is beyond the need of hydroxy, or if you give hydroxy, they would not develop a good therapeutic index in their body, therapeutic dose in their body, rapid enough to have the response. Then trying to give a very high dose actually puts the patient at risk. So maybe these studies which are coming out of hospitals are not the right place to come out of. When somebody is in the hospital, probably they have gone beyond the need for hydroxy. Now they are probably in a stage to need steroids. And this is why I want to bring up one more study after this one, which claims to be for the outpatient, the exact thing that I'm talking about. And I want to see those flaws with you as well, that what is wrong with that study. So the primary concern with the short-term high-dose 4-iminoquinoline regime is cardiovascular toxicity. Fine, we understand that. The exception is a Brazilian study. So now he's talking about the common occurrence of myocarditis in COVID-19 and the extensive use of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. So he's talking about the cardiovascular toxicity that we didn't see a lot. But then he says there is an exception of the Brazilian study where they had to stop the study because the toxicity was a lot. But then they admit that study, chloroquine 600 milligram was given twice daily for 10 days. Chloroquine in vitro studies have shown is 5 times more potent than hydroxychloroquine. Chloroquine is known to be more dangerous compared to hydroxychloroquine. So now 600 milligram of chloroquine compared to hydroxychloroquine should be multiplied with 5. So 3,000 milligram of hydroxychloroquine, for example, and given twice daily, 10 days. Of course, they had to stop it. So over here, they talk about it, that here recovery trial, we are just referencing that. Then if I continue in this study, one interesting thing for me, and I am not a conspiracy theorist who sits down and talks about conspiracies or politics or grouping or party leanings. I am more data oriented, science oriented, and I may be wrong. This is an evolving situation, but look at this. Recovery trial is supported by a grant to the University of Oxford from UK, and there's a long list over here, including, so there is NIHR, then there is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, then Oxford Biomedical Research Center, Medical Research Council. So most of the UK entities are here. I saw an entity from Thailand as well, I believe. And then finally, they say that the views expressed in this publication are those of the authors and not necessarily those of the NHS, NIH, and all that, and neither mine or Dr. Bean's. This is a flawed study. This actually is a bad study in terms of the dosage used. And it is a bad study in terms of zinc absence. And I have always said it, and I would say it again. Some people claim that the zinc hydroxy's usage is only because it would allow the zinc to go in. That is not true. Hydroxy, I'm going to just repeat it, I've said it many times. Hydroxy increases the pH in the cell. When the pH is increased, it becomes basic, especially the endosomes become basic. Then there are a couple of things that happen. Number one, the cell membrane stabilizes. So when the virus attaches here with the cell membrane and wants to come in, wants to fuse with the membrane of the cell and send its RNA in, that one area is hampered. Secondly, when the virus is replicating and the hydroxy allows the zinc to come in, then zinc would go and hamper the viral replication. Two. Third, inside the endosomes, because the environment is now alkaline, the viral replication and assembly is stalled. It is reduced, it is slowed down. So that is another mechanism. And fourthly, which is very important mechanism, and that is that when the ACE2 enzyme is built in a cell, I say it all the time, that enzyme, the last part of it develops a candy on it. There is a glycation of the last amino acid that happens. That's like putting a candy in its hand and saying, all right, go out and function. And if this candy is not present, if this glycation does not occur, then for coronavirus to bind with the cell becomes difficult because coronavirus binds with the ACE2 enzyme. It binds here. And hydroxychloroquine hinders with the glycation of the last amino acid. It does not let that happen. So the affinity of the ACE2 receptor for the coronavirus S protein is actually reduced. These are all mechanisms of hydroxychloroquine. And I did not make these mechanisms at home. These are the mechanisms present in the books. So the guy who was saying that, hey, you guys are just bullshitting and everything, I wanted to ask him that, do you even know if there is a single mechanism of how it works? Anyway, so that is the hydroxychloroquine. I want to show one more study here. This is a study, if you look at it, 16 July. The study is hydroxychloroquine in non-hospitalized adults with early COVID-19. So you can now think about it and say, all right, this is the right way. Outpatient situation, patients are not in a hospital, they're not in a dire state, and using hydroxychloroquine over there is going to be fun. It would be right. The problems with this study. Number one, if you see, it is a good study, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial conducted from 22 March to 20 May. Settings, internet-based. So again, how weak is being internet-based? I can't comment. Would the people actually be taking the medicine or not? Would they be compliant with the correct dosages? I don't know. I can't say. Somebody has to go through the data to see that. But it is an internet-based trial. It is not a observed trial, number one. Number two, it doesn't have zinc in it. And I believe it doesn't have azithromycin in it either. So the result was, and look at the dose. Dose is not bad. Oral hydroxychloroquine 800 milligram once, followed by 600 milligram in 6 to 8 hours. No, so that I would not as bad as 2400 or 6000 milligram. This still is 800 plus 600, 1400, then 600 milligram daily for 4 more days. So first day is 1400. I would still think it is a lot. 400 milligram is sufficient to start with. India has done 800 milligram, fine. 1200, 1400, 1600, 2400, 6000. These are just weird doses. And then in addition to this, there is no zinc in here. There is no azithromax here. And what they have said is that this actually, if you see here, 50. So here is it: 491 patients randomly assigned to a group. 423 contributed primarily endpoint data. Of these, 341, 81% had laboratory confirmed infection with this SARS-CoV-2. 56% were enrolled within 1 day of symptoms starting, so early on. Change in symptom severity over 14 days did not differ between the hydroxychloroquine and placebo group. There is no zinc in here. And then at 14 days, difference in symptom severity was not there. At 14 days, 24 participants receiving hydroxychloroquine had ongoing symptoms compared with 30% of the placebo. So again, 24% versus 30%, not a great difference. Medication adverse effects occurred in 43% of the participants receiving hydroxychloroquine versus 22% receiving placebo, which is interesting. I don't know why the placebo folks were also getting the adverse effects. Were these adverse effects from placebo, or they were just not healthy enough? With placebo, 10 hospitalizations occurred, including 1 hospitalized death. With hydroxychloroquine, 4 hospitalizations occurred, plus 1 non-hospitalized death. Their limitation, they don't consider that zinc is a limitation. They don't consider online is a limitation. They simply say that only 58% of the participants received SARS-CoV-2 testing because of severe US testing shortages. So again, this is another study right in front of you. To me, I'm going to stop here for today. To me, it seems like there is a lot of still a lot of bias going on. Somebody had said that I'm going to send you 3 studies, recent studies, links that would show for sure 100% that it does not work. I'm still waiting for those. I'm going to go dig for those as well. Maybe it doesn't work. My own experience, lots of my friends' experience has been that it works. And I also hear from a lot of people who say, no, it doesn't work. So I guess we'll continue to work on these. I want to share one last thing with you, which is very interesting for me. And that is, just like our media and our folks are so gung-ho on proving or disproving hydroxy, we don't talk like this for remdesivir. Remdesivir is not doing much better. I want to show you an article. So this is not a study, this is an article. And if you look at the article over here, there are some interesting things in here. So investigators were able to measure a significant improvement in recovery time. So when the remdesivir was actually approved, do you know that the only thing that they showed to get approved was that the recovery time was 30% faster than compared to others? Despite the experimental antiviral's failure to demonstrate a significant survival benefit, the FDA authorized its use. This got authorized without showing results. And then even now, the studies that are going on, they are not showing data that is any better than their placebo controls. But this is an approved drug, and the same folks who have that religion that hydroxy is bad, they use this in ICUs all the time. Why is that? Now the mechanisms and the science and the data all becomes muted or moot point, but whenever it comes to hydroxy, there is a big fight. That is what I really do not understand why that happens. Remdesivir is not doing any better. Have you heard of remdesivir in the media the same way you hear hydroxy all the time? Fine, hydroxy is bad, let's say it. Well, then be fair enough and talk about others that are not working. That doesn't happen. So I think that there is a need to be a little bit more data driven. Fine, we'll continue to look at hydroxy. Maybe at the end of the day, 6 months later, we'll come back and say, yes, hydroxy was not working. My observations are it is working. There are many other doctors who believe it is working, who have seen with their patients it works. Fine. I actually believe there is scientific reasons for it to work, and I believe there is anecdotal reasons for it to work. I believe the studies that are used to discredit it are not that well studies. In some cases, they are bad studies. Somebody has to go and ask people, why did you give 2400 milligram? Did you not know it can cause damage? And etc. So this is where we are at for today. Once again, please like, subscribe, and share. Tomorrow we will have Dr. Nadir Pour Hassan with us for leronlimab. Monday we'll have Dr. Bruce Patterson, and then we have a few more people who are in the pipeline as well for the coming weeks. So with this, please stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. My discussion here is not political. I do not have a leaning towards one side or the other side. Don't use these discussions as prescription. Just be informed and educated. Thank you very much. I haven't seen James from Canada for a few days. I hope he's okay and he would join us. Bye-bye, guys.